So Ohio State's in the playoff, just in case you were wondering or even questioning that. I don't even know why there was ever a question. The new playoff rankings came out on Tuesday night. I'm Stephen Means and Stefan Krajisnik. Ohio State dropping from number 2 to number 6. Stefan, the number one thing I took away from them being number 6, which was ahead of Tennessee, which you and I had been discussing away from the microphones, of as long as they're way ahead of Tennessee, then they're in a good spot. They are ahead of Tennessee, which means that on December 20th or December 21st, on whatever day they play, it's going to be inside Ohio Stadium.
Yeah, no doubt. And that was kind of a talking point, going into these rankings of exactly how the Tennessee-Ohio State line was going to work out. I'll just bring up these numbers because you and I had both said it. We were pretty confident that Ohio State was going to be the 8th seed. And I had even written an article on Monday night kind of predicting how the rankings would shake out. And it was pretty spot on with Ohio State at 8 and Tennessee at 9. You look at the wins, Ohio State's won at Penn State, won against Indiana. Those are top 10 teams in the latest rankings and have been, top 10 teams for most of the season. Tennessee's only real, noteworthy win based on these rankings is home against Alabama. And then you look at the losses, they kind of cancel each other out, right? Like losing at Arkansas, losing home against Michigan, those kind of cancel out. And then Tennessee lost at Georgia, Ohio State lost at Oregon. Oregon's loss was a little bit, or Ohio State's loss was a little bit closer if you want to go down that route and nitpick a little bit. So strength of schedule pretty equal. I think the wins was going to, kind of divide the teams there. And so not too surprised to see that shake out. And like you said, that's massive for Ohio State. The way the rankings kind of shook out as a whole, it demonstrates to me that Ohio State's going to be home no matter what happens, right? Like you look at the conference championship games that matter, SMU Clemson, the winner of that game is presumably getting a top 4 bye, so that wasn't going to affect Ohio State anyways. And if SMU loses and they stay in, it doesn't affect Ohio State because SMU is already ranked below Ohio State. You look at the SEC title game, the Big Ten title game, win or lose, I don't think it's not going to drop Ohio State because all 4 of those teams participating are already ranked ahead of Ohio State. Now, could some losses maybe help Ohio State move up? Sure, but the point of the matter here is that they're going to be at home. The Boise State UNLV game, again, if there's an upset, Boise State's going to drop out. UNLV will go in. They'll either be the 12 seed or they'll be the 4 seed. Neither result really impacts Ohio State. So in terms of Ohio State getting a chance to return to Ohio Stadium, the only thing that was going to really get in the way is Tennessee ranking ahead of them. That didn't happen. You're safe now where you are. You know that you're going to be coming home. Now, whether you're the 8th seed, the 7th seed, maybe as high as the 6th seed, we'll see. But you know where you are, and you kind of know the path that's ahead. It's probably getting – I would guess you're probably getting the 7 or the 8th seed at this point, and your second round game would be against the Big Ten champ or the SEC champ. I think the path right now for Ohio State is pretty clear that you're going to be playing back-to-back games in the playoff against a Big Ten team or an SEC team, back-to-back games.
So this is what I hate the way they do this in the rankings. They are 6th in the rankings
overall. Right, yeah.
In the actual bracket, they're going to be 8 because SMU is going and Boise State are going to jump 2 teams to be getting the bye week. That's why they do this in the most confusing way possible. I hate it. I wish they would just do it. Just don't give us the seeds until later on in things. So right now, Ohio State is ranked 6th in the college football playoff. If they started on Friday, they would be the 8th seed because of that. I just wanted to make sure we had our math correctly in those situations because it's very, very confusing to the point that I put 6 in an article and I changed it to 8 and I didn't need to change it to 8. It's in a weird spot right now.
There's, again, a lot of numbers for sports reporters. We don't do well with that stuff.
No. I like words. I like words. So we're going to do a pod later this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go listen to the full podcast on Buckeye Talk, wherever you find that. Get the text 614-350-3315. All that information coming to your phone first before anywhere else. Where later this week, I think we're just going to predict the full 12-team layout. But, Stefan, in terms of this weekend, in terms of what games are important to Ohio State, I think it's literally just 2 games. It's Oregon and Penn State, the Big Ten championship game at 8 o'clock on CBS, and it's Texas and Georgia at 4 p.m. on ABC. Because here's what the rankings told me in terms of the grand scheme of some things here. The SEC is playing for how we used to talk about the Big Ten championship game when it was Ohio State and Oregon was that the winner of that game gets the 1 seed and the loser of that game gets the 5 seed. I think what's happening now is Notre Dame is now locked into the 5 seed. Mm-hmm. And so Texas and Georgia, the SEC championship game, the winner gets the 2 seed, and the loser is going to get the 6 seed. I think you agree with me on that. So now it becomes
the only like formula to disagreeing with that is if Texas and Ohio or Texas and Penn State are the winners, I think Texas would be 1, Penn State would be 2.
Yeah. That's the only. Yeah, as long as Oregon, I can't fathom a world where Oregon loses to Penn State.
Yeah, Oregon will be 1 or 6.
Yes,
Texas will be 1 or 2, so on and so forth. But Oregon's kind of the one where it's really locked in. They're going to be number 1, or they're going to be they could maybe be number 5. They could be 5.
But in the world, in Steven's world of what I think is a realistic possibility, Oregon is going to be the 1 seed because I think they're going to beat James Franklin at Penn State. Texas and Georgia, the winner and the loser, are going to be 2 and 6 in that situation because Notre Dame's locked in the 5. So now it becomes a conversation of what does the committee value more? Losing a game that you had to earn the right to be in, or head-to-head, especially since the reason Penn State is there is because of something Ohio State didn't do. I tend to believe that there is room for Ohio State to move up to 7, simply because of that head-to-head, especially if Oregon does what I think they're going to do to Penn State. You might not agree with that based on what Ward Manuel had to say directly after the rankings came out.
Yeah, no, he said pretty straightforward that, the teams who aren't playing aren't really going to move. And for the most part, it sounded like they weren't going to punish the teams who lost. But he did say they were going to monitor the games closely, all that kind of, we call it coach speak when coaches say stuff like that, the generic stuff. I don't know what you call it in committee speak. Yeah. He made it sound like as long as these games were competitive, they weren't going to move around much. Now, like you and I both think might happen, Oregon could win by a sizable margin against Penn State, and now things are moving around. In theory, Ohio State, I think, could move up as high as 6, because if Georgia loses a third game, and it's against a Texas team that they beat earlier this year, could Georgia drop below Ohio State at, Georgia would be 9 or 10-3 at that point, right? Could they drop below a 10-2 Ohio State team? I don't know. It might, if Texas blows them out, maybe if it's a close game, I don't know how much it changes. Penn State, like you said, if they lose and if it's by a sizable margin at 11-2 against a 10-2 Ohio State, who do you think is better? I don't know the answer to that because I don't know how the committee is gonna handle it. So it's going to be really interesting. So in theory, I think it's very reasonable to say Ohio State could move up as high as number 6. In practice, we don't know the answer to that. That's something that we're going to have to wait until Sunday to find out.
And the only reason we're having this discussion because we're trying to map out paths, right, at this point of what Ohio State's playoff path, what their national championship path could look like. Right now, it involves playing a home game against Tennessee on either December 20th or December 21st. It's going to be very, very cold. Or it might be, who knows, man? Who knows what the degrees is going to be on a given day. But the point of the matter is,
according to ESPN, that game better be in Columbus. Otherwise, Ohio State's not winning.
And again, unless Michigan is on that other sideline, I'm not worried about Ohio State. I'm just going to be real with you. I'm not. But listen, it's been a negative couple of days here. The positive is Ohio State is officially in the college football playoff. Do we know their official seed yet? No, because there's still some things that need to happen on Saturday to solidify some of those things. But they're going to be in the playoff, and they're going to host a game, which means this group of seniors, this team, gets a chance to write a better ending to their time in Ohio Stadium, because that wasn't pretty on Saturday. So they're almost getting a second chance to write a punctuation mark on their time playing inside of Ohio Stadium. We're going to take a quick break here. If you're watching on YouTube, go check out the rest of this podcast where we're going to transition into some recruiting talk because it is signing day on Wednesday. Ohio State signing another top 5 recruiting class featuring a few 5-star recruits in it, including Devin Sanchez and Tavian St. Clair. Andrew will join us to have that conversation as well as we rank the 6 most interesting members of that 2025 recruiting class. And we're going to talk about them as if they're already Ohio State football players, because as of Wednesday, they are. They're officially Ohio State football players when Ohio State takes to the field in 2025 to play Texas for the first time. So we'll take a break here and we'll come back with that on Buckeye Talk.